On this side.
I was influenced by some essays you've written about the limits of language to sort of advance political change. So you've written about like the euphemism treadmill and stuff like that. There seems to be modern versions of that where, to abolish gender binaries, we're going to abandon pronouns and so forth. And you work on a university, so you're probably familiar with a lot of this. And I'd like your opinion on some of these strategies for advancing social change through abandoning certain languages and certain words and forms of language.
Yeah, well, they're politically motivated campaigns to change language can have an effect, as we see in what I call the euphemism treadmill. That is the fact that we don't use the word Negro anymore, even though it was a perfectly respectful and unexceptionable term through the 1970s. Martin Luther King frequently referred to Negroes. You had the United Negro College Fund, and that got replaced by Black, which then got replaced by African American. But it's easier to do it with what linguists call open class vocabulary items, nouns and verbs, than with closed class or grammatical items like pronouns. And since the 70s, there have been a number of proposals to introduce a gender-neutral pronoun into the English language, so that we wouldn't have to say he or she or the clumsy he or she. None of them have caught on. And the language doesn't change in terms of it does change, but not quickly and usually not by deliberate engineering when it comes to things like articles, pronouns, past tense and plural markers, and so on. So there'll be just a natural resistance. They're learned early. They are highly frequent. They are distributed across millions of people conversing with one another. And so I don't think we have to worry about that changing too quickly. But sure, there are more respectful and less respectful ways of referring to people, and we've seen those change, and they'll probably continue to change. I mean, what I call the euphemism treadmill refers to the fact that the reason that there often is a cycling is that the change in attitudes that you want to effect by changing the language will meet resistance in terms of the rest of our psychology. I don't think it's true that language determines your attitudes and beliefs, although it can push against them. And as long as there's still some kind of negative connotation to an entity, then changing the label for it will just result in the new label picking up the emotional aura of the concept rather than the other way around. And as long as there is prejudice against African Americans, and where the connotation is not as positive as you'd like it to be, there'll be the urge to find a new label that has not yet absorbed the taint of the existing one. Now African American was, I think, took over pretty quickly sometime in the 1990s. I think Jesse Jackson was the force behind it, and we have gone now for more than 20-something years without a replacement of that, which might be a reflection of the fact that prejudice against African Americans is declining. In other cases, like Asian replacing Oriental, that stayed put, possibly because there was less prejudice against Asian people, and there wasn't a need to find a fresh replacement for that.
If I could just interject on this, given this campaign season, and also what you can see on Twitter if you look for it, do you think public speech is now evolving to become less polite in America?
Yeah, it's possible. I don't think that the Trumpism shows that our attitudes have changed, that we're becoming more misogynistic or racist, and you can do some Google searches that are kind of quicker than Gallup or Pew polls to track some of these changes. Seth Stevens Davidowitz has shown that, for example, if you Google for various racist or sexist terms that are used in jokes, you get a pretty good barometer of racism that people may not be willing to admit to in public. And if you do that, you don't see a sudden U-turn in the popularity of racist jokes in the last, say, 6 months. So I think it is more a question of people who kind of kept their attitudes to themselves now feeling that that they're allowed to get away with it, that some of the taboos have been broken. Whether they will reassert themselves with the decline of Trump, we don't know. I kind of hope so. I think that there is a benign taboo against overtly racist and misogynistic and homophobic language, that there are ugly attitudes and there always will be, and that there is a kind of benevolent hypocrisy and taboo where there are certain things that you just don't say in public because that does kind of legitimate them. They can be threatened. We saw that with taboo words for sexuality, starting in the 60s. That words that you just could not say in print or on the airwaves are now common. That could happen with racist and homophobic terms. I hope not, and too early to tell.